How's it going? Pretty good. Just playing a little bit of PZ for a bit, you know. You can ask me some questions, I guess. Sure. Um. Well, deontological ethics doesn't have a teleos, right? Thank you for bringing this content to me, or for motivating me. This is part of the reason why I stream, is so we can do this. Right? Like, do you know what like by duty? Or you could even argue that Aristotelian virtue ethics don't really have a teleos either. Like, you can be courageous just for the sake of being courageous. And part of this discussion, when you talk about teleos, has to do with intrinsic and extrinsic rewards. Like, are you doing something for the sake of the thing itself, the kind of person you want to be, or like a Kantian perspective, like the duty stuff? Or are you doing it because of some consequence? And if you're doing it because of some consequence, then, you know, it could be to please God, right? It could be utilitarian because it makes everybody happy, or it makes you happy. You know, you could have a self-interested, you could have just a personal ethic. You could say, I just do what's good for me, and that's good for the world because I'm a good person and I deserve goodness. I don't know. You could say something like that. I guess it's kind of circular, but still. Why are you writing like an essay on this or something like that? I think morality, well, again, like when we talk about objectivity, what do we mean by objectivity? I see ethics as a set of principles, and those principles are objective. Same with a mathematical formula. They don't change. Beneficence it's just a definition. It's always the same. The thing that's different, or the thing that you would maybe discuss subjectivity in, would be in terms of, like, what do we mean by subjective? Like, the way that I perceive blue is different than the way that you perceive blue. And that's true, but the reason is because... Wait, what's the other two I'm going here? I'm doing two things at once, so... I'm trying to, like, have a coherent discussion with you, but at the same time, I'm playing this game. People's perspective? Like, what arguments people offer. Well, let me finish this point, and then we'll go through that. Yeah, my position on objective ethics has to do with... I have a paper written on the website if you want to check out the paper, but it has to do with people making decisions towards objective principles, and the application of those principles. That's where is the great... It's not really subjectivity, but it's just you're developing the skill of being ethical. And so I take the Aristotelian approach of practical wisdom, that we have to develop a sense of how to apply our ethics the same way you would apply mathematics. It's just, you know, I think there's epistemological things, like sometimes there's just knowledge that's not, you just don't know certain things, you know? And so you might do something and the consequence is bad because you didn't know some information. Okay, there's way too many zombies here. Can't be just fucking unarmed fucking fighting the zombies. And yeah. Yeah, mathematical formulas are abstract, but at the same time they have internal consistency and coherence, right? They're not arbitrary. Depending on how you define your terms, there is this, like, I don't know, structure to them. Like, that's what an argument is, fundamentally, right? An argument is taking a fact or a premise and then building on that fact or premise until you have a system of thought. Now, you can argue that all systems of thought are flawed, but that's self-defeating because your criticism is a system of thought itself. So you can't, you know, destroy language as you speak. It doesn't make sense. So, okay. So Manuel is saying mathematical formulas are abstract concepts. Yep. Then he says, what is the justification for your morality? Well, so, again, we have to take a few steps back here. So, ethics are objective, right? But mores and moral codes are contingent on social groups or individuals. A person might have a specific morality that is a cultural expression of their, you could say, ethical framework, but I think it's important to distinguish between morality and ethics, because then what you can do is you can use ethics to evaluate morality. So, for example, a religious group can have a specific moral code, right? Or any group for that matter, even in the workplace. And then you can say that that moral code is wrong because it violates autonomy or something like that, or it causes harm or whatever. You know? Those are like two ethical principles. So, I I feel that if we say that morality and ethics are the same thing, we actually, it's not good for us. It makes things more confusing. Oh, what's that? Fighting zombies here. Or zombo philosophizing. Zombo philosophizing. What's happening? Okay. Oh, man. Okay, we're going to put this hoodie on. And we're going to wear this jacket, too. Oh. First, we're going to fucking say, fuck you, zombie. Fuck you, asshole. Okay. So, I think when we say your morality, right? Let's just examine that part of. So let's take 2 steps back, actually. Whoa, no, I'm philosophizing. See, this is like real life. You can't just sit there and be a philosopher because then get fucking mugged on the fucking streetcar by a fucking crack addict. This game is basically just city is overrun by crack addicts. I know we can have like an empathetic view of addictions and shit, but at the moment, we're gonna laugh at the fucking zombie crack addict analogy. Not that we should be stomping crack addicts in the head. I'm not saying that. I'm just okay. Anyways. Well, these guys all died in a great spot because stuff is right here. Okay. Let's just turn this all into stuff. Okay. Ethics are objective because ethics are. So what you want to do is so ethics are principles. And a principle is objective in the sense that the meaning of the principle is not contingent to any individual. It's beyond subjectivity, a principle. And our capacity to apply the principle is different than the nature of the principle itself. Just like all definitions are. It has nothing to do with ethics specifically. It just has to do with the nature of the cosmos, you know? So some things have their grounding in... Its grounding, well, maybe it doesn't need to have grounding. An axiom, the grounding would be in the way we use language. Right? It's just a linguistic thing. It's just like, why is not the number one always the number one? So the axiom would be like Aristotle's laws of thought, for example. So if you want to say that, like, the reason that Aristotle's laws of thought are so important is because then we can't think or even communicate with each other. Because if I say the word car, and then I say, hey, let's take the car and go drive somewhere, and I say, that's a car over there, there has to be some consistency between the usage of the words. Otherwise, the words don't have any meaning. And so when we talk about, it's not really objective ethics, it's just, what is objectivity? You know? And objectivity is something that's not contingent on a specific individual. Like my perception of subjectivity is like how you feel or an opinion. You know, you say that's subjective. Well, what's subjective? How it feels, right? But emotivism or like, you know, okay, so Emmanuel says, isn't that a form of collective intersubjective group defining words? So we use our personal experience to determine abstract things, even though not empirically proven. Rather, you use metaphysical terms like words that are grounded in experience. Okay, there's a lot in that right there. Okay. Serious philosophy discussion here. Okay. A form of collective intersubjective group defining words. So you just mean that the way that we define words, but it's not about the defining of the word, right? We're talking about something in reality. And so like non-maleficence, for example, we'll just take an example. Not causing harm. Not causing harm is not something that is in the word itself. It's in the situation that we're drawing a boundary around. We're saying in this case was harm caused, right? And so you could think of that as like a window. Did somebody break the window? And if there was no window broken, then harm was not caused in the context of like this window breaking thing. Now, if somebody, like, people can lie and pretend, like someone can say you hurt me when really they didn't, and they can fall back on subjectivity and say, well, it depends on how I feel. You hurt me, and that's what matters to me. But that's not like honest. That's like, you know, one second. Someone's taking the ambiguity of language and using that in an unfair way, and then you're not able to, you know, really communicate, because the mode in which they're using it, the lying or the deception, kind of breaks the rules of that consistency. So collective intersubjective group defining words, so that again goes to like a cultural relativistic kind of context, or we could also talk about how, from a postmodern perspective, there is no truth and there is no way to define it. So this is good. This is a good example. The criminals defining stuff in their own way. Yeah, for sure. We can get to that in a second. I like that example. Yeah, we all agree on the usage of a word, though. I have to just go through all the things you said, because you said a lot. We have to agree on the usage of a word, right? So when we say, like, in the game here, these are pants. So they could call them Jimmy Jims, right? But then I wouldn't know what it means. It's still referring to the same thing, though, right? It refers to an object that covers your legs, that, you know, and there's certain properties of it. It's made of fabric, you know, and there's certain, and those properties of what it means to be pants, the specific instance would have to fulfill that. So in ethics, there are certain properties that, it's just that ethics is not an object. That's why I think people get confused about it. It's not something that you can point at, but not everything that exists is stuff that we can just point at, right? Like the number one. Where are you going to point at the number one? And then are you going to say that the number one doesn't exist? I don't know. Maybe. Like, maybe that is true. But we still have to be able to justify that. We can't just say that just because it's a word, it doesn't have meaning. Like, that's not real. Okay, so the collective defining of words, we do agree on it, but the thing in itself is independent, and what makes that thing, whatever it is there are properties of the thing, like the sun, or a sun, is something that has meaning based on its internal properties of the thing it is, and then we have some word that designates what that thing is, and when we use the word, we also correspond it with the properties of the thing, right? It's a super analytic philosophy here, by the way. I want to take more analytic classes. Excuse me. Okay, so it's not intersubjective in that sense. Like, the intersubjectivity of defining words comes down to whatever the utterance really is. Like, there is a sense of, like, Jimmy Jim, if that's what I said, we could have had that for pants, but there's like a whole etymology of the term, and it just didn't work out that way. But it's kind of arbitrary. You know, maybe a linguist would say it's not. Like, they would have a very concrete analysis of the word pant. But it's a different thing. Like, what word we use for something is a different thing than why water boils at 100 degrees Celsius at this altitude or whatever, right? And so I think that it's a category mistake to say that this intersubjectivity of defining words also applies to things in themselves or the nature of the universe. Because if that was true, then we could you could just think things and shit would just happen, right? But you can't. Like, there's a limitation. I'm going to get to everything you said. I have to just do it one at a time. So we use our personal experience to determine abstract things. Well, no, right? Like, that is a fallacy in itself. You can't. An abstract thing is a generalization, whereas our personal experiences are particular. One sec. I feel like I'm at work now. This is cool. Okay, I'm going to give you guys, let's see what this looks like. since you have prompted me to have such a fruitful discussion, I will turn the camera on. Do we have to have lighting here, though? We'll get the lighting. Okay, one sec. Okay, I'm back. All right, so let's see what you say here. So, okay, one sec. I'm getting to everything you're saying. So we use our personal experience to determine abstract things, even though it's not empirically proven. Yeah, so let's just go one step at a time with that one, right? Using your personal experience. So what is the role epistemologically from our personal experience? Like I'm doing stuff, right? Like I'm sitting here playing this game. You're chatting with me, watching the other people are watching the stream or whatever. And so what our brain does is this is what comprehension is, right? It takes all of this information from different inputs, whether it's like abstract thinking, which would be stuff that we're a concept in our mind, right? Or the things I'm doing in my world. So let's take the concept of like square, or like trapezoid or whatever, because this would be like a trapezoid, right? So I see these three things. They're all the same. They all share similar properties. They're in different locations in the game, this shape, right? But from these specific similarities, I can generate, like the human mind has the capacity to generate a concept from those particular instances, right? And then that concept follows certain rules. So we can have ideas of things that aren't real, but when we kind of go through the steps of if it was derived from experience, so some of the things are not derived from experience, right? Like a centaur. This is very early modern right now. A centaur is not something that anyone has ever seen, or a dragon, or God for that matter, right? And you could argue that ethics is nothing we've never seen, but I don't think that's true. I think that I have experienced ethical things. I've done ethical things. I've seen other people do ethical things. Other people have done ethical things to me. I've had things that are wrong done to me. And so from those particular instances, there are certain properties that make them similar. I can create a concept out of them. So that's one way I think that humans in general have come to understand abstract information and ethics. And so once we have that conceptualization of ethics, then it's our job to go back into the world, right, and pick out instances of where we can create an ethical circumstance. And some instances maybe you won't be able to. You fucking can't. Like this Israel-Palestine situation, Trump is, making it look like he's doing a good job, but is he? I don't really know. I don't think so. He's doing the best he can, I guess, or whatever, but they're fighting again. People are getting killed and stuff, so it's hard to say that that's a good thing, because there's still a lot of harm being caused. Certain ethical properties are being violated, and so we would say it's not an ethical situation, and we don't have to get into the details of it. I'm just saying as an example. Okay, so now I'm just going from personal experience. So there's a psychology here, right? And so part of the problem with philosophy is that it doesn't include how we think about things, the process of thinking. Because I think that helps contextualize a lot of our arguments and stuff. And so, so to determine abstract things, so I covered that, even though it's not empirically proven. Okay, so this is important. And I think that we need to kind of go through what it means for something to be empirically proven. If you're having a personal experience, and that is empirically proven, right? Maybe you mean scientifically proven, and that's a different thing. Science isn't like science is just meant to be an extension of your personal experience. It's not meant to be outside of our personal experience. All experience is in the same place in the cosmos. Science is just a way to arrange the cosmos so that we're not the ones, like we're not, our own confusion isn't leading us to believe something. Science and philosophy, but it's just philosophy is not necessarily empirical in the same way. At least generally, right? So, sorry, I'm just like reading this stuff here. Yeah, and so your own personal experience with things is like the beginnings of scientific inquiry. You know, it's that it's in the world and you're testing it to see what's going to happen or whatever. So it's not that your personal experience isn't empirical. I think that's not true. I think that would, and, you know, but if you mean scientifically proven, that's okay, because you can still do research. Depends on what you mean here specifically, right? Like you can do research on things. Like we have evidence, for example, of chimps demonstrating an awareness of justice or fairness. When you have chimps do a specific task, or capuchin monkeys maybe. Was it chimps? Either capuchin or chimps, doesn't really matter. They're primates. And so when you have them, oh yeah, I was about to put this on. Doing a task, and then you give one a better treat than the other one, like one of them gets like, you know, a very high sugar or more of it, like 10 grapes, and only one of the other one gets one, they get really upset at the disparity between the reward, right? So this is an indication that other primates show a sensitivity to fairness, right, which is a very basic form of justice. So if something's not scientifically proven, it just depends if we have the means to do so. Like, is the theory falsifiable? So we need to unpack what that means, if that's what you're trying to say. So you use metaphysical terms like words are grounded in experience. Okay, which metaphysical terms? We can go through those. Words are grounded in experience. So again, like, a word is like a placeholder for an idea or something in the world. And let's just check this out here. It's like a currency, words, right? Now there can be problems with the currency itself, the object of the currency, but it's a mode of representation. And we don't want to get confused in the representation itself. You define it as unfair. Okay, so when I say unfair, I'm talking about one specific ethical principle, which would be justice. And we can debate whether or not justice is fairness. Like, there are different forms of justice. So large group of criminals can define it as fair in a pragmatic setting. So part of the thing with that argument, right, and what we would say to the criminals is they're violating the categorical imperative. So there's not just one ethical principle. There's a way that we, and maybe they are right in that way. Maybe they are correct in their reasoning, but the difference is that they give up other things, right? They're clearly, and you could say that, and maybe that's just the, you know, it's, I don't know. Like, I think we could talk about that. Like, is it ethical? You know what I mean? I would say no. Like, those criminals that just stole all those jewels from the Louvre, you know, they could say that we're poor, we don't have anything. Who are you elite people to have these jewels when we could, you know, use that money to feed starving people? Like, you could have a Robin Hood example, right? And I think that that's where maybe you need to make like, ethics comes down to your conduct and what you're doing, right? Or you could say an organization or a group. But, you know, like, we're all going to judge each other based on what we think right and wrong is. And we are going to make our own decisions individually on what right and wrong is. And sometimes you may have to make a decision that other people disagree with. And it's not about, because that's, ad populum is a fallacy, that the truth is what everyone believes or what everyone votes in, or truth is a popularity thing, but it's not. And so that also applies to the truth of our conduct. So a large group of criminals, it depends on what they're doing. For example, if it's like sex trafficking or like torturing people, you know, the categorical imperative is just being disregarded completely. If it's a situation where, you're being deemed a criminal in Russia because you want to overthrow Putin because he's killing people, or Putin and Russia come into your country and they're like, we're going to, kill all your people and take your women and bring your children over to Russia and get them to fight your own people and shit like that. Like, if you're going to do stuff like that, I don't see how you can justify that ethically. When you go through the, what properties in the criminals, again, who is a criminal? I'll bring up these examples because we're looking at the position of who the criminal is. Criminal is defined by a society, right? So in our case, if the Louvre example is someone that's engaged in theft, right? So the justification from the criminal there would be different than someone who is a protester in Russia that is now deemed a criminal. Those are different criminals, right? And so it's important for us to figure out what we mean by criminality, and some of it would apply and some of it wouldn't. A criminal in a dictatorship is different than a criminal in a free democracy. And then once we do that, is the act, even if you're a deviant and you're going because you just don't want it to be an appeal to authority. Being moral is just doing whatever the government says is true. What if the government's fucking wrong, right? And that's why ethics is important. Ethics is supposed to be there so that you know when to dissent, right? And so I think when you're saying large group of criminals, you probably mean like bad guys that are hurting people and they're actually engaged in the ethical violation. But again, what's pragmatic about that? I guess you could just say that it's self-interest, right? But that's not an ethical justification, because why is your self-interest outweighing the interests of others? What do you say to the utilitarian argument, right? So a code of ethics is a meta-ethical perspective where you take multiple ethical principles and you have to rank prioritize them. And so I think that is based on certain kinds of values. There are values that we have, and in my book and other things I've written and things that, other people have written, the value of having well-being, I think is pretty hard to disagree with, right? It's contingent to the human condition. So some things are based in what we are. And unless you take some other religious perspective and you say that you're not human, but again, it's not going to be empirically. And in that case, you have this concept that doesn't apply to reality, and so it becomes a belief issue. Okay, I think I went through the criminal pragmatic thing. All right, next point. Pants are empirical. Yeah, not really the same. We're talking about abstract concepts, but there's the concept of the pant, or the prototype example. Right? So in cognitive psychology, they differentiate between categories and concepts, as categories are things in the world. So there's pant, but then independent of an external stimulus, it becomes a concept now. And it still has this categorical function, but it's in the mind. It's not something that is in the world. And so the reason I'm using pants as an example is just because I'm bringing it back to the game, because we're playing the game here. But you should be able to take on one side something that's in your experience, and on the other end, you're through our linguistic capacities and our capacities for abstraction in itself. And abstraction is just saying that having a label that goes beyond the physical objects, that's where it started, right? And then from there, we were able to hold that label that's not contingent on an external world inside of our minds, right? Via working memory, or you can draw it with long-term memory. Draw it to your current experience. Okay, we need to do something here. I'm playing this game. I'm always willing to discuss stuff with you guys for philosophy. And I will be teaching philosophy again soon, online, and we can talk about this stuff when I do that. Okay, just give me a second here. What am I doing? We need food. Okay. Let's eat these chocolate-covered beans. Okay, so... Yeah, and so, yes, I know that but let's talk about abstraction now, right? Because when you say abstract concepts, well, how is it the case that humans can do abstraction at all? Let's understand abstraction first. And once we understand the nature of that, then we'll bring concepts in too, right? And so I think I went through concepts with you, right? And differentiating from categories. Let's eat these crackers. Okay, so, and linguistically, my hypothesis is that we went from physical objects, this makes the most sense to me, and then we were able to do non-physical, which you're saying abstract concepts, linguistically in the mind, right? The connotative meaning of pants can be Jimmy Jim, yeah, but the denotative meaning would literally be pants. So then this is what we were saying, bro, yeah. What is the, like when you say grounding, right? You're using this word grounding. What is the grounding of a denotative meaning? Like, what is the thing that makes it the thing it is? And part of it is just like it's a sociocultural trajectory. We've just been using, it's like we use paper for money. Just something we've been doing. If we had a lot of seashells, maybe, or I don't know, something. We've used different things at different times in our life, but there's just a way of things. Like, if you go to the website, do you know my website or no? Here, I'm gonna give you something. This is a Wittgensteinian, I'm giving you a Wittgensteinian justification or answer to your question. Let me just find it here for you. Is this one? No. Is this one? No. I have 4 Wittgenstein essays here. This is the essay. It's called The Bedrock of Justification. And that's kind of exactly what you're saying. Okay, so check that out. But basically what I say, or do you want to read it? I don't know. I can like briefly summarize it, or I can even just read it to you. Let me just read it to you. Okay, I guess we have to pause this game for a second. Okay, so maybe I can like put it on the stream. Here, 1 second. Let's just do that instead. Okay, just give me a second. I'm not like, I'm still learning how to use this thing. I'm going to pull this up on here. Okay, here we go. I need one more. Look at that, eh? How fucking cool is this shit? Can you guys see this? I have to go back to Twitch. Yeah, we'll get to that. We'll get to that. Okay, so I'm going to read this to you guys. So consider the following dialogue. Someone asks you, why are you doing that? You respond, because X, Y, Z reasons. They say, well, why don't you do this action because of X? You respond, because I justify with ABC. Then you ask again, well, why do you do A? After a while of continuous questioning on the reasons for why you act in a particular way, you can only respond, that's just the way we or I do it. And so this is the bedrock of, this is like what all of our language that we've built is based on this. It's just something that we didn't do. It's just there. And his philosophical investigations, Ludwig Wittgenstein discusses the reasons we have for actions and rule following. Blah, blah, blah. So anyways, I guess you can read this, but it would take me some time to read it. The point is he says that it just comes down to convention. That's just the way we do things. Right? So, okay, how do you come up with abstract things without using experience to generalize things? This is a psychological question. This is just our mind. Like, humans are super smart. Like, think about in your experience, when did you start to be able to reason abstractly, right? I think developmentally, kids are able to do this at like 6, 7 years old, maybe 8. Like it begins and starts to increase. But other organisms, it's very difficult for them to, animals, it's very difficult for them to demonstrate abstraction, because you can abstract things. It's just a function of the mind. The mind has this as a capacity, you know? It's not just like a one-to-one sensory. That's part of the problem with empiricism, is it's not a one-to-one sensory thing. You can create properties of things, you know? Like that's what fiction is based on. Like fiction, there's a whole bunch of stuff that's not based in reality, but we're able to imagine it. I guess that's a good enough word. And there are abstractions within that, but we've never experienced it. So I still don't see how you universally justify morality using science and social interactions that just happen where people define it. Again, I'm not justifying morality. I'm saying that objective ethics exists. Our capacity to have enough awareness of the situation and our ability to apply the appropriate ethical principle and action in that situation is variable. That's going to change. But beneficence doesn't change. Like the doing good or goodness occurring is just, that's a concept in itself. And we do derive that from experience. We can see it, and we can, because of the capacity of generalization, if you're not justifying morality, then the ought or reason why I do it does not have any teleos purpose in my view. Again, but you could be doing things. You can be doing things just because you want to be a good person. Like sometimes I'm nice to people, like because the teleos, is the teleos based on the consequence? Like, what do you mean by purpose here? Teleos is like the end. Like, why am I doing this? Like, what is the end I'm getting towards? Like, if I'm nice to somebody, like kill them with kindness kind of principle. If I'm nice to somebody, am I nice to them because I want them to be good? Like, I want a positive interaction, or am I nice to them because I want to be a nice person? Because sometimes I'm nice to people and they're fucking assholes to me, right? So the teleos doesn't fucking matter, but I'm still a nice person. The teleos doesn't fucking matter sometimes. This is the problem with consequentialism, right? There's two forms of ethics. There's consequentialism, where the teleos and the purpose and the consequences of the act are relevant. But then there's deontological ethics based on duty. And we can, I think, like talking about where does duty come from? You know, like if it's not duty to an external source, then what does duty mean? You know, good person is dependent on people's personal meaning of it. I believe that a specific God grounds. Well, okay, okay, sure, we can go there. I think your arguments were much stronger before we start going here, but we can go into this place. A good person is dependent on people's personal meaning of it. Is that true? That could, again, just go back to you could have a psychopath justify their being good, and that's their own personal meaning, so it becomes circular. It would be begging the question, right? We need to have something else to define what goodness is. Good is a very tricky word, right? If you mean like, yeah, we have to define good here. Because if good just means that you're faithful to God, there are people that have hurt others in the because they were trying to please God. So it's where is the defining property to determine whether or not they were good? In their perspective, they could say they were good, but if everybody else disagrees, like if Hitler thought he was doing a good job, is he doing a good job? No, I don't want you to feel disparaged. You know, whenever me teaching philosophy or going through philosophy, we're doing it right now. Who cares what I've read, right? Me reading it just means that we can talk more, right? And if you and that feeling you have from that, when you say, I guess I'm not well versed in classical philosophy, yeah, that's okay. And like, fuck, man, that's awesome. It's okay that you didn't read it, but you can, right? Like if you join the Discord server, I have books there if you want to read them. I'm gonna get killed in this game. I gotta pause it. Yeah, so you gotta be careful with the God stuff. I know that God tries to do that, but it's, first of all, there's, even within a religious group, there are many different views and definitions on what God is. That's the first thing. And then if all the Muslims were on the same page with what they thought God was, which is impossible, There are different religions. And then the way they resolve that is by killing each other in general, historically, right? Doesn't matter who you are, historically. Eastern Orthodox. Okay, well, sure, if that's what you want to do, man. Like, if I was talking with one of my friends the other day, and I'm adamantly an atheist. In the same sentence, I'll say, like the story of Jesus and the Bible is a fiction. But if it means something to you and you can bring goodness to the world, then go for it. I think there's a better way, but I'm not going to try to get in the way of what you think is important. I just think that there's a responsibility to being religious, Like, you don't, religion is a dangerous thing because it as an entity, it clouds our capacity for critical thinking and learning. It doesn't do that. That's not its purpose. And I think to be religious in a healthy way, you have to be able to understand what it is and how it has the capacity to control and manipulate people. It's very important because that's what it has done, right? And it might have some positive things, like when people are dying or if they're sick, or if you're dying, like that. It's easy to become religious then, right? But if, people you care about are being killed because of someone else's fucking beliefs, right? Like this whole Israel-Palestine thing is fundamentally a religious conflict. As much as people don't like to say it is, like, if they were all of the same religion, that would be one less thing that they would be fighting about. It would be more like a civil war than like a war between two different types of people, because they're fundamentally defined by the fact that one of them is Muslim, the other one's fucking Jewish. So, and they both claim ownership to this like sacred land. So to say that it's not religious is just delusional. And so, I think that we need to, the question really becomes, you can do some good things ethically and morally with religion. You can. That is true. But at the same time, there's a lot that you can do that's unethical. It might be moral within that religious group, but it's technically unethical, And like some people believe that punitive punishment, like spanking kids, is the way to deal with their bad behavior. And it's, fundamentally against the law because so many people, because it's not constructive. It doesn't actually help. It makes them more aggressive, and it can lead to like, PTSD and shit like that, or, it depends on how bad the fucking, it can be abusive, which can lead to a PTSD, right? Or trauma in general. I guess trauma's better. So, it's hard when you have scripture telling you that you can do certain things. And then if you don't have the tools to criticize the scripture, then how do you deal with this problem of interpretation? Okay, I'm going to build my argument on the transcendent argument to deconstruct atheism. You're so funny. Okay. Thank you for your time. I need to study because I did a very bad concerning my understanding. Okay, well, I hope that, did you use ChatGPT or did you do this by yourself? If you did this by yourself, then you did a great job. If I was arguing with Chatty G the whole time, that's fine. I'm getting good at that. Are you following the channel and subscribing? Or are you following on Twitch here? Okay, what am I doing? Okay, we have an empty water bottle, some matches, flashlight. We're just going to dump all this stuff in a bin. I don't really care what it is. Do I need this flashlight? No. Matches? No. Empty bottle? No. Dirty rag? No. Shovel? It goes outside. Okay. All right. See what we got going on here. I would suggest joining the. Oh, he's gone. Okay. Okay. All this rotten food in here. Should just take all this shit out. Potatoes. So funny. I get these random philosophical encounters. Totally unprepared for them. Alright, we got going drowsy, bored, weepy, thirsty. Huh. What am I doing here? Deconstructing atheism. That's so funny. Okay, I'm gonna take a break. Maybe I'll come back and play some more.